7. All meeting videos are also posted to Millis Public Schools website under the school committee. All videos are also available on YouTube. All school committee meetings and agendas can be found on the school committee page of the Millis Public Schools website. Persons wishing to speak during open session must sign in before the meeting starts. Comments are not to exceed 3 minutes in time, and individuals may not name students, staff, or parents. All topics for discussion must be limited to those listed on the evening's agenda, and all comments must be directed to the chair. The committee may not respond to public comments. It shall be their decision to discuss issues at a later date. We actually do not have a quorum to have action items voted on tonight. However, what we are going to do, since we had guests and presentations scheduled, and quorum fell apart late, we're going to go ahead and do the presentations, and then so there will be no formal roll call or action items taken tonight, but I'll start with student representatives. Ben, come on up.
Many sports events kicked off today with softball, baseball, and track having their first formal games/meets of the spring season. Quarter 3 ended last week, April 1st, so students are into the home stretch with the last quarter coming up. Prom tickets for juniors and seniors are on sale for this week, so $75. Please get your payments in. Make sure to do that. They are selling them during both lunches, so if you would like to buy prom tickets, you can buy them there. Literary Arts Night is the 27th of April. If you'd like to sing a song, read a poem, or any sort of artistic expression of the sort, you can speak with Ms. Diver if you would like to present. Solo Ensemble is the 13th. The band and chorus have both been working hard on their pieces, and you can come support them in the auditorium on the 13th as they work on their solo pieces. There's a half day tomorrow, which is always good for students to kind of get a little bit of a break and get out early. And finally, Step Up Night is tomorrow for the 8th graders. I believe it's at 6:30? Yeah, 6:30. So the 8th graders are going to get a nice taste of what's to come for them in the future with all the clubs and events there.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
And next we'll have our teacher rep.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Exciting. I'm just going to start by saying, as I was walking in tonight, it was so exciting to see kids out on all the playing fields. And it was nice out, the weather was warm, and to get to look at the new shed over by the tennis courts, that was very exciting. Tom Ingraham was talking about how excited he was about the shed today. So as he went and loaded some tissues in, it is that time of year, unfortunately. So it was just kind of a nice vibe in the air as I came in tonight. I hope you guys experienced it as well. We'll start with Extended Day. Again, the deadline to enroll is April 14th for summer programs specifically. Over at the Clyde Brown, the preschool application information packets are due by April 12th at 3 p.m. MCAS season is in full works, so grade 3 MCAS is slated for the 7th and the 8th of this week, and grades 4 and 5 had their ELA MCAS last week. I'm sure math is on its way. At the Clyde Brown, they are excited to reinstate PAWS, which is Police Activities with Students programming last week. The program is in its pilot phase, and they're hoping to expand it over the next few years, and they're very excited about this partnership with members of the community. On Thursday, April 14th, they will be holding a practice lockdown drill. Their plan is to have the teachers discuss it up front, go over the routines with the students, and they'll be sharing more information with families next week so that families can kind of talk about it at home as needed. For our kindergarten families, the time has come to start considering whether or not to drop your student into the immersion lottery. Always an exciting time here. I think it's a great program. My kid's in it, so it's kind of fun. And the Home and School Association is having their spring fundraiser meeting. If you are interested in joining them, it is April 13th, 2022, and you can find more information about most of these things in the Clyde Brown newsletter. At the middle school, grades 6 through 8 have ELAMCAS testing next week, so we'll be sure to get a little bit quieter down here, we hope. For those of you who've not seen it, the grade 7 puts out their 7th grade scoop in the newsletter each week, and it is written by all the students. It is a great read. So here are just a few items out of that. In science, they had a guest come in from the Charles River Watershed Association, and she talked about how hard it is to kind of protect that watershed, stop the pollution, and they were working on, again, building a partnership to kind of promote knowledge about this, especially since we're in the watershed. In social studies, they are talking about the Cold War, which is kind of fun because they're starting to talk about the Cold War in grade 10 social studies as well. And so they were studying propaganda materials, which was kind of nifty. And as a fun side note, one of the pieces we're doing in the spring dance recital is a piece by Prokofiev, and it was actually originally music from one of his propaganda films for the Soviets, so it's like full circle. And in the huddle, we were awarding students for excellent empathy and perspective taking. So Owen C., Ben V., Gabe C., Catherine Q., Miguel A., Mackenzie R., Irene A., and Alicia E. all were recognized by their teachers. They also, across the building last week, celebrated World Language Week, and they had teachers Senora Goff, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, Harbin, McGuire, and Rooney organized an art exhibit and a whole bunch of trivia activities, and they're very thankful to Merit for funding these activities. They have welcomed a second school adjustment counselor upstairs. Miss Blessings has joined them, and they're very excited. And author Mindy Ulrab will be presenting on Wednesday, April 27th during the day, which is the day of the Literary Arts Night. And they're very excited about that. Mrs. Robinson is who hooked Miss Diver up with that author. And again, Brent Kohler will be hosting a volleyball camp for boys in grades 5 through 7 over April vacation. At the high school, we had our second round of Chem Club grade 3 partnerships. We did flame tests and calorimetry with our grade 3 students from Ms. Carlson's class. And right before April vacation, we'll be getting the rest of the third grade classes in. The Massachusetts GSA had their Southeast Regional meeting here last Friday as well. It was a very busy day. And it was brought to Millis by Daisy Lyons, so she kind of spearheaded that. And our Global Scholars had their first annual World Quest Challenge. And in fact, I believe that Ben, who skipped out of here, was one of the winners, as well as Brooke Whalen, Lily Cassidy, and Mia Molinari. As is already mentioned, 8th grade step-up night is this Wednesday. The club fair is at 6, and then the actual presentation is at 6:30. It's our first live one since 2019, correct, Riley? Very excited to have that. The junior class will be taking an actual field trip to another school, which is also exciting. On April 8th, they're going to a college fair at Medway High School. And just an announcement for the seniors. They are looking for parent volunteers as they start planning a more traditional senior week, again, for the first time since 2019. The TIES program is very excited to have students placed at Brothers Market in Medfield and Shaw's. Each student is actually working up to 23 hours a week. They have students placed in internships with the Mills Police Department, the Clyde Down Extended Day program, and Bethany House. And they've had a TIES student formally accepted into the Bridgewater State University Excel program, so that is super exciting for them. For those of you who don't know, that is a fully inclusive post-secondary program for individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities. And so they're going to get to have the same experience as their peers, but in an appropriate organization and support setup, so that is great. Finally, TIES has been chatting with the Norfolk Fire Department in order to develop some safety instruction for their students. Ben mentioned that the students are very excited to get out early tomorrow, but the teachers are very excited to have some time to work. At CFB, they're going to be continuing their core literacy review. The middle school and high school teachers, the high school teachers specifically who are not part of the JED Foundation, will be continuing their anti-bias training and their culturally responsive teaching. Special education staff is going to be workshopping special education law, which is super important. And let's see, finally, and Ben should have mentioned this because he's one of the leads, the Millis Theater Group has the final weekend of their Addams Family play. It is featuring seniors Jonah Staples and Ben Padelka, as well as additional students from grades 5 through 11. So if you find yourself with something to do or not something to do, come check out the show on Friday and Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right.
Yeah.
All right, next we'll do our time and learning, our class of 2021 profile of testing and placement. Mr. Catalano's favorite night of the year.
It's like Christmas.
We didn't do it last year, right?
No, we did.
I think we did.
Did we?
I think so.
I'm pretty sure we did.
And Mark did it.
Mark did it. I don't remember that part, but I do.
I'll airplay to it. Perfect. Thank you.
So for the first year in a very long time, we do not have Mark Godicki doing his presentation.
Sad. It's been since 2019. Yeah, since we.
This is my favorite. I don't know if you know this. This is my favorite presentation of the year. Because it's so positive, right?
Mhm.
Well, I don't want to jump ahead.
Yeah, it is positive. This year, it's a little wonky.
No pressure,
I'll
though.
explain.
No pressure on Steve's favorite
Mrs.
night.
Copese left. I was going to say I'm very positive tonight, which is very rare that I'm not positive, but I'm extra positive.
Library, right?
Yeah. 4212.
Cute baby
Oh,
shower.
so cute.
Should I go ahead? All right, so thank you for having us here tonight. It has been a while, so I'll reintroduce myself. I'm Riley Dunn. I'm one of the two school counselors here at the high school. And this is Meg McCarthy. She's new to us this year. And Meg has been an awesome addition to Millis High School and to our small school, big family. It's actually kind of feels weird to say that it's her first year because it already feels like she's so embedded in everything that we do here. She has done an incredible job of connecting with students and staff, and she's just been an awesome addition. So she wasn't here for the class of 2021, but she is a nice person and is willing to sit up here with me and talk through some of the data with you guys. But yeah, just excited to have Meg on board, and you guys will learn how incredible she is over the future years. So we are going to talk about the class of 2021, which graduated, of course, last year. But I want to give a quick update on some of the things that are going on with our current students here at the high school. And some of the things that we do to, prepare them and get them to the point where we get to talk about their SAT scores and their college placement and all of that. At this point, we've completed 2 rounds of freshman seminars with our 9th graders, and we will do a 3rd round with them later this year. The freshman seminars are really getting acclimated to high school, expectations for the high school, differences between high school and middle school, and getting to know each other, really. And then we also have completed at this point, within the past month or so, our 10th and 11th grade seminars. Our 10th grade seminars are really focused on career education, helping each student figure out what, career path they may want to pursue and what steps they want to take to get there. And our 11th grade seminars are very focused on the college application process. So we have dove in head first with our juniors, and the ball is rolling with the college application process with them. We had our junior parent night in early February, where we had representatives from UMass Amherst, Boston College, Mass Bay, Elon University, and Suffolk University come and talk to our students and give the perspective of the college application process from the perspective of the admissions counselors, so they're not just hearing this stuff from us. So that was a great night, and we're grateful to have the relationships that we have with those schools because they are awesome to us and give our students great information. Another opportunity, as has been mentioned tonight, for our kids to connect with college admissions counselors is coming up this Friday when we're taking our juniors over to Medway High School. And the cool thing about that is that's a college fair for just Medway students and Millis students. We work together with the Medway counselors to organize that. And for the 45 minutes that our kids are at that fair, it'll be just the Millis students in the fair.
Oh, cool.
So it's actually
Good.
not only a good opportunity for our kids to learn about a whole bunch of schools all in one place, and there will be 70 colleges at the fair, But the college reps are typically the reps that are going to be reading applications for Millis High School, and they're actually able to meet Millis kids, know that they're just Millis kids, get a sense of how wonderful our kids are. So we're excited to be able to do that again. Again, it's been a few years since we've been able to do anything like that, and we're the first field trip in a year and a half, so we're excited about that. Tomorrow night we are beginning the process of welcoming the class of 2026 to the high school with our 8th to 9th grade step-up night, so we're excited about that as well. Mental health-wise, we have completed the Signs of Suicide program with our 9th graders in their health classes. We also this year were able to partner with the Samaritans Foundation. They came in and provided suicide prevention for our 10th and 11th graders. We will also have a Signs of Suicide program for our seniors towards the end of the year, you know, kind of to prepare them as they head off into the real world. We're working with the JED Foundation to really examine what we do for our students' mental health, the things we're doing well, and the things that we could be doing better. So tomorrow we've got a nice long meeting where we're going to dive into the results of the student focus group, the parent focus group, the staff focus group, and the student survey, and really start to look at next steps. So we're psyched to be able to do that as well. We are right in the middle of course selection for next year. So this week, Meg and I are meeting individually with every single student in the high school to look at their course selection for next year, make sure they're on track for their goals and their post-secondary plans and all of that stuff. And our seniors are working on their local scholarship applications, which are due in a few weeks, and they will all need to decide what their plans are for next year by May 1st. So that deadline's coming up as well, so we're helping the seniors to kind of make those decisions and really finalize their plans for college and other plans for life after high school. All right, so back to the class of 2021. This was definitely a unique year in many ways. So I just want to take a minute to kind of paint a picture of what the class of 2021's junior year and senior year experience was and how that is going to play into some of the data that we're going to talk about tonight. So the class of 2021 were juniors in March of 2020 when the pandemic hit. Typically, we're going to talk about SAT and ACT data. Typically, students take the SATs or the ACTs in the spring of their junior year and then again in the fall of their senior year. Because of the pandemic, the SATs and ACTs were not available at all in the spring of their junior year, and there was very limited availability in their senior year. Test centers that would normally be able to host 1,000 students could only host 200 students because they all had to be 6 feet apart. Things like an outbreak in a school would shut down a test center, so tests were getting canceled left and right, even if kids were able to sign up. Thankfully, in step with that, the colleges went test optional. Essentially, all of them decided that they were not requiring SAT scores for this incoming class. So we really, for our kids, sent them the message and encouraged them to let that go and to not stress about that piece. You heard these crazy stories about students traveling 4 hours away to be able to take the SAT, and we really encouraged our kids to just let that piece go. The colleges are not looking at it. The colleges understand that there are a million reasons why kids were not able to take the SATs and ACTs. So you will see that our SAT and ACT participation rates are not on par with a typical year. This also affected AP exams. The exams themselves were different. Typically, the AP exams are 3.5 hours long. They're a pen and paper test, and they're in person. Because of the pandemic, with schools all across the country having different in-person virtual things going on, the College Board was forced to create a test that everybody could take at home. So the test was an hour-long test for almost every subject that was taken at home and not in school, at home on the computer. So the tests themselves were different. Also, of course, the way that students were able to access their AP courses throughout the year were different. Well, at times we were virtual, at times we were in person, some kids were hybrid, some kids stayed virtual all year. And of course, the AP teachers had to figure out how to deliver their AP content to all of the students, regardless of those situations. So we weren't sure how that was going to play out in the AP exams, and it's still hard to say exactly what impact that all had, but just something that's helpful to keep in mind as we, talk about the data from this year. Also, the pandemic affected the way that students approach the college application process, or at least in theory, we were thinking that it may. Students, as they're applying to college, weren't sure whether or not the pandemic was still going to be going by the time they went off to college. Many kids, it seemed, were thinking more about pursuing a community college for a year or two, so that they could, rather than go to a college that may not even be in person and you're paying $50,000 a year for, maybe it makes more sense to consider the community college option. So things like that affected the way that they approached the college application process. Also, we saw kind of kids reporting feeling a little bit less ready to go off to college, just based on the fact that their junior and their senior year, they weren't able to participate in sports, in internships, in community service projects. So all those things that help kids to get real world experience and help them feel more ready for that next step and really like they've wrapped up their high school experience, they weren't getting those. So I think in some ways we were wondering what effect that might have on the college application process and where our students ended up going. With all of that said, we were really excited to see that in terms of the college application process and the our college acceptances, we were really pleased with, and our students were really pleased with their outcomes. Our acceptances to competitive schools, to a range of schools, were really on par with what they are in a typical year. Colleges pretty consistently reported that they were able to, they had this one less piece of information with the SAT scores and ACT scores not being submitted. And it is not as if I think there's always a worry for kids that don't submit scores that colleges are going to favor the kids that do, or they're going to assume that they're not submitting scores because their scores were low. And we really saw that colleges, of course, didn't make that assumption. They understood that there was many reasons why students would not have submitted SAT scores, and their acceptances were very proportional to so the number of students that they accepted that submitted test scores was proportional to the number of students that applied that accepted. So essentially, you didn't get favored if you sent test scores. So that didn't hurt our students or students across the country. So we were psyched. Our kids, just as they would in a typical year, got into some incredible schools and went off to those schools. 81% of the class of 2021 went on to four-year colleges. This actually was pretty much in step with previous years. 91% planned to go on to some sort of formal education, so that means another 10% went on to two-year schools or vocational preparatory programs. But yeah, that was kind of in line with how things had been in the past, so we didn't see any major changes that were notable in terms of college plans, which we're glad that the pandemic didn't affect that for our kids. In terms of geographical placement, for kids going off to college, 65% of the class of 2021 chose to stay in New England, which is a little bit less than the previous classes. They went on to 18 different states, as compared to the class of 2020 that went on to 15 different states, and the class of 2019 who went on to 12 different states. So seems like things are maybe trending in a direction where kids are going off to more varied places. Maybe it's just an effect of being cooped up in your house makes you want to travel farther away. But yeah, so nothing crazy there, but an increase in kids going further away for the class of 2021, slightly. So for the SAT, this was the 5th class to take the redesigned SAT, and just as a brief overview of how it works, there are 2 sections, the evidence-based reading and writing, and then the math with the optional essay. And the optional essay is really not something that we've really ever emphasized because colleges don't particularly focus on the essay section. And in January of 2021, the College Board actually did away with the college, the essay section of the SAT. So that didn't really affect this class in particular, but you'll see that moving forward, that there just is no essay section anymore on the SATs. And the total scores out of 1,600, so the highest you can get in each category is 800 in each category. So again, our students' ability to take the SAT was really impacted by the pandemic. In a typical year, we have around 90% of our students participate in the SATs. Only 18% of our students took the SATs, so for the class of 2021. If you wanted to compare it to Massachusetts participation rates, 34% of Massachusetts students took the SAT, and 41% of the nation's high school graduates for the class of 21 took the SAT. So we did have slightly lower participation rates than the state and the country. Again, there's many things that affect that. Like, we never offer the SATs here at Millis High School. Our kids go to area schools to take them. Some area schools were able to offer them to their students only. So anyways, again, not a ton to read into with the participation rates. Our mean score was a 1229, which is an increase from the class of 2020, which their mean score was 1131, and we were above the Massachusetts mean and above the national mean. Of course, the group of 18% of our students who took the SATs, that's going to be kind of a naturally self-selecting group. The kids who are going to find a way to take the tests are the kids who are pretty confident that's going to be a strength for them. So again, just not a ton to read into with this data. It's just a weird year for it. But our scores were technically higher on average than they are in a typical year. And that was true for the evidence-based reading and writing section. It was an increase and above the Massachusetts and the national means, and also for the math section, it was higher than average, or higher than is typical for us, and above the Massachusetts mean and above the national mean. The DESE has come up with a way for us to compare our scores to area schools that are deemed to be similar to us based on different demographic information, like student-teacher ratio, financial information, achievement gap data. So they've picked 10 schools to compare us to that they think are similar to us in those ways. And they compared us to Douglas, Georgetown, Ipswich, Littleton, Lunenburg, Manchester, Essex, Maynard, Seekonk, Sutton, and Tingsboro. Compared to those schools, we had the third highest overall SAT score out of the 11 schools. We had the fourth highest evidence-based reading and writing score, the third highest math score, and we did have the third smallest overall. We only had 16 kids. The largest group of test takers out of those 11 schools was Tingsboro with 73 kids. So that's kind of the range. Again, it's really hard to make any sort of meaningful comparisons when you're talking about such small groups of kids. And our participation rates also dropped for the ACT, which is just another college entrance exam that colleges accept, but since colleges were test optional, we usually have lower ACT participation rates than SAT participation rates. Our kids tend to focus more on the SAT and getting prepared for that. So the class of 2020, for example, had 24% participation rate, which is, kind of typical that a quarter of our students would participate in the ACTs, and the class of 2021 only had 3% of students take the ACTs. So the average composites were higher than normal, but it was only 3 kids, so it's really hard to read into. Lower ACT participation rates as well. And I should mention a few things that used to be part of this presentation, but are not anymore, are the Barron's ranking of competitiveness. That sort of would look at all the different colleges and rank them by how competitive they are. That doesn't exist anymore. They stopped producing that list, so that's why it's no longer in here. And then also, We didn't have any students in the class of 2021 participate in SAT subject tests, but the College Board has also decided to get completely rid of SAT subject tests. Again, colleges don't need them anymore, so it's all kind of reflected in that. So those are two things that you may remember hearing about in the past, and they just don't exist anymore. So that's why they're not included. But at this point, I'll hand it over to Meg to talk a little bit about our AP scores.
All right, go easy on me. First time right here. Okay, so hi everyone. Nice
Hello.
to meet you guys. So we're now going to talk about advanced placement, like Riley said. And as Riley mentioned, due to the pandemic, all the AP exams had to be taken online, and they were shorter and just different than previous years, with the exception of calculus AB, Spanish language, and music theory, which were all in person on paper. So we had 16 different AP exams taken during the 2020 to 21 school year, in comparison to 13 in the previous year. 61% of the senior class participated in AP program by taking at least one AP class, just slightly smaller than 64% in the previous year. In 7 of the 11 exams taken as a result of classes taught by MHS teachers, at least 70% scored 3 or better. 6 of those 11 exams saw at least 80% of test takers scoring 3 or better. 4 exams had 90% or more scored 3 or better, and those were calculus AB, Spanish language, studio art, 2D, drawing. And the highest percentage of students at 3 or better was Spanish language at 94%, 31 of 33 students, and then studio art drawing, just 1 of 1 student, and studio art 2D, 1 of 1 student, followed by calculus at 92% with 11 of 12 students. So also, as Riley mentioned, obviously the pandemic affected the entire way the course was taught. So take all this with that grain of salt. But overall, we had 189 exams taken by 102 students, which was a slight decrease from 194 exams taken by 109 students in the previous year. 72% of exams earned a 3 or higher, a little bit less than 84% in 2020. Same percent for 2020 and 2021, 45% of exams earned a 4 or better. And then 21% of exams scored a 5, which is the highest possible score. And that was higher than the 16% in 2020. And then if you can see this graph, it just shows the last 13 years of data. It's been relatively steady since 2018. And the graph shows in the blue, the bottom bar, it's the number taking exams, and then the red is the number of exams administered. So yeah, 102 taking exams and 189
So
administered.
I have a question. I'm not sure I want to. I'll throw it to you, but I think it's more for Riley. I thought in years past you guys talked about our participation in AP versus the state average or other schools, and I recall it being very high.
Yeah.
I don't know if that number's still available. Like, there was,
We were-
maybe it was one category, it was really high.
Yeah, we were lumped in with really high achieving school. Like, we were up there with really high achieving schools in terms of not only our participation rates, but the percentage of students earning a 3 or higher. I bugged Mark about this too. Like, where did you get that information? How can I find it for this class? And we both looked, and we just can't find it.
It wasn't
so
made,
we were looking
it
on
wasn't
the
made up, was it?
No, it might have been made up. Mark might have
I
been
think,
wrong. No, I'm
mark
just
the,
This is what we find
mark the
out.
record, please.
Yeah, so I.
It was not made up, let me be clear, it was not made up.
Yeah, it wasn't made up. It did exist, but
They
we
may not
couldn't
track it
find that
anymore,
word.
but I remember that it was
It was yeah.
very high.
Yeah,
Well, but
yeah. So
And with this, like, with these numbers, like, I know it's 109 and 102, but it's, these kids, the 102 kids took 1.8 AP exams, whereas like 1.7 the year before.
Right.
So, like, these kids are taking 2,
Yeah.
we've got a lot of kids taking 2 or
Riley,
3
could you go
exams
back one
a
more?
year.
Just
oh,
go
yeah,
back.
sorry.
Bob, this is for Bob. What happened from 2010 to 13? I know our share numbers, but that
That is a good question. I think 2011 was a very big class. That was the big class. We had like
Okay.
109 kids in that senior class. and then the following classes, kind of dropped off. And that's, like you see at the end of the graph, it's kind of tailing off. Our senior and junior class last year was smaller than the senior junior class the year before. Same thing this year. We have 146 kids in grades 11 and 12.
But look at the numbers, though.
So-
So smaller amount of kids taking more.
The percent, right.
Yeah.
60% of the senior class, like Mike mentioned, 60% of the senior class taking one AP exam is significant.
Okay, so in the big report, it includes mean data for 9 of the 11 exams physically taught at MHS, 2 of which had fewer than 4 test takers. So 5 of 9 exams from classes physically taught at MHS had mean grades of 3 or above. And then the mean grades of Millis students were higher than global and state mean grades in 5 of the 9 exams taken that were a culmination of classes physically taught at MHS. And those included calculus, AB, English language, human geography, Spanish language, and U.S. history. Okay, before I talk about this, I'm just going to define what these words are. So an AP scholar is someone who had a score of 3 or higher on 3 or more exams. An AP scholar with honor is a 3.25 average on all the exams taken, plus 3 or more on 4 or more exams. And then an AP scholar with distinction is a 3.5 average on all exams taken, plus a 3 or more on 5 or more exams. So hopefully you followed all that. 35% of the overall AP exam group, which was 36 out of 102 students, were named to that AP Scholar group. 13 members of the senior class earned AP Scholar with distinction status, and 8 members of the senior class earned AP Scholar with honor status. And 15 seniors earned AP Scholar Award status. So Riley already talked about the DART schools, so those 10 other similar schools, as Desi told us. So of the 11 total schools in the DART analysis, Millis students recorded the 6th highest percentage of exams scoring 3 or above at 71%. So we trailed Georgetown, Littleton, Ipswich, Manchester, Essex, and Lunenburg.
And if I could just interrupt this, this is where the high participation, if you compared the percentage of Millis kids taking the AP and the percentage of Georgetown kids taking the AP, Millis is much broader.
I also don't think 71% 3 or more is anything to shake a stick at. I don't think.
Absolutely.
I know you've prefaced a lot of this. That is not concerning at all. Almost 3/4 of our kids get 3 or more, because that's the threshold to count towards college, correct?
Exactly, yeah. And something that I don't know how it is at other schools, but our policy here is that if a student is signed up for the class, they must take the exam at the end of the year. So that means that, the kids that even the ones that struggle in the class all year long, and it's a hard thing for them, we want them to take that test and see how they do. Where other schools, it's an option, not all schools, but some schools it's an option. So that would also bring their scores up if the kids who don't feel like they're going to do well don't, choose not to take the exam. But we have all of our kids take the exam.
Okay, so we're going to shift gears a little bit to just talk about Spanish immersion, which I heard Ms. Opie say the lottery's opening soon, so that's exciting. So there were 15 Spanish immersion students in the class of 2021. Overall, the Spanish immersion GPA was 4.2, which was higher than the class average of 3.59. 93% of SI students indicated 4-year college compared to 80% of the entire class. 27% of the SI class took the SAT, and outscored the overall class average, which 655 to 614 for reading and writing, and then math, they outscored 660 to 616. The overall mean SAT score for the SI class was 1315, which was 86 points higher than the overall class mean. And all 15 Spanish immersion students that took the AP Spanish language exam scored 3 or above.
Well, one would expect that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the number we should be focused on.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay, yeah, so I didn't by any means mean to paint a picture like be prepared for these scores to be low. In fact, we were pleasantly surprised, and in some ways our scores are much higher because of the pandemic. But just helpful context to keep in mind as you look at some of these numbers. But we were really excited that, you know, it didn't impact our students' ability to move on to higher education in large numbers. That was pretty consistent. And our number of acceptances to competitive schools remains steady. 90% of the graduating class of 2021 was admitted to one of their top 3 top choice schools, which is kind of on par with the class of 2020. And the class of 2020, I should say, was really not impacted college admissions wise. Their senior spring was taken away from them because the pandemic hit, but their college acceptances and all of those things were pretty consistent with previous years and not impacted by the pandemic. 66% or almost 67% said that financial aid was a package and was a factor in consideration of where they ended up going, which was on par with the class of 2020 at 64%. And the overall satisfaction with post-high school plans in our survey information for graduates was a 4.2 out of 5, which isn't bad. Of course, we want to get them all to 5 out of 5, but with teenagers too, 4.2 out of 5 isn't so bad. So yeah, it was definitely a different year in terms of SAT and ACT data. And it'll be interesting to see the kind of lasting effects of the pandemic just over the next few years. Colleges are, for the most part, remaining test optional, at least for the next year. You know, there's a few schools, I know MIT has gone back to requiring test scores for the next incoming class. Schools in Florida and Georgia remained, you know, they wanted SAT scores and ACT scores all along, so there are definitely exceptions to that, but many schools have found that there's value in not requiring SAT scores. So it'll be just kind of interesting to see over the years how that changes things. Also, stay tuned for more SAT changes. I think for our current sophomores, the SAT is going to be completely online, so that we'll see how that affects things as well. But yeah, so that's kind of a summary of the class of 2021. We, you know, continue to appreciate the support that we receive from Mr. Mullaney and the school committee for the counseling office, not only with all of the things that for the college stuff, but also with the mental health piece. I know that you guys are definitely a voice for us in terms of the things that we're able to get and use to help our kids, so we appreciate that, and thank you for your time.
Excellent
Or yeah,
presentation.
do you have questions? Sorry, I should say.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
All kidding aside, I enjoyed this one the most because it shows what you spend 13 years with the kids, getting them ready to do something, you know,
Yeah.
and there's plenty of students doing great things. The one question I have, and I think in the past you guys have looked at it a little bit. What was it? 80% are going to school, or not? No, 91 are doing some form of education.
Yes.
What are the other? I know you don't know this, but going forward for next year, if we could spend a little time talking about the other 10,
Yeah.
because some of them are making that decision. School's not for them. There are plenty of excellent opportunities in the workforce, high-skilled labor jobs. So it'd be curious to see what they're doing, and because that's something we've talked about in the past. We found in years past, some of them were making decisions because they couldn't afford it.
Right.
So there was a financial impact. And then others, they had opportunities for job training programs, apprenticeship, going into unions,
Going to the service.
going to the service. So
Yeah.
it's not for everyone. I don't judge anyone, as long as you're doing something productive after. And so I think that would be helpful. I know this is easier to document and put down, but it's the whole picture, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I hear also at graduation, we didn't do it last year, what they say, what they're doing after.
Yeah.
There were a number of kids going in the service. And then I also knew some kids who got, union apprenticeships, and that is a good thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They're not incurring debt, and they're working towards what they want to do. So that would be one observation. And the other observation I make, because I was trying to be positive tonight, if you listen to Ms. Copese, she gives a very detailed description of everything going on in the schools. There is great things going on into the schools from the special education side with ties. That was great news. So everyone in the schools are being impacted or have the opportunity for extra curricular activities, extra attention, specialized programs. And then this is just kind of the summary of, at the very end, what they do. So I think it's very easy to talk about all this. I don't think people necessarily appreciate all of the good things from the pre-K programs, which we're going to talk about, all the way through to the senior. So I do appreciate this because I think it also puts a tie kind of on everything that's happening. There's great things going on in these schools, and I don't know if everyone appreciates that, or I shouldn't say appreciate. I don't know if they understand that and know how much is going on. So thank you for helping get the word out.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, again, great job. I think one of the other things it takes with the class of, well, this class of 2021, but also what we'll find in the class of 2022, or you made the point, like, of all these scores, there was some hesitation going into this before kids took it. Like, what did the different variations of learning, remote learning, hybrid, how was that going to factor in? And the class of 2021 did as well as previous classes. I have a feeling the class of 2022 is going to fall right in line with, again, what we've seen. So by no means was anything over the last 2 years in education perfect or ideal.
That's right.
But in Millis, I am fairly confident in saying that we did as good a job as, and we being the administrators, the teachers, you guys, in continuing to help kids learn, continuing to help them grow from an educational perspective. And in these certain things where we will have data, there's going to be places where data is going to show that not everybody did, and it wasn't, again, there is definitely lost learning, lost time, etc. But there is also this, where you see these kids did pass their AP exams and sit in their rooms and take them for sit in there for an hour and make sure everybody in their house was quiet, and they did it. I think we need to take a minute and just understand that too, that there's some, it worked.
Yeah.
Again, not great, but it worked. One thing on test scores or not the test scores, but the test optional that I think will be interesting, if you guys monitor, is are schools seeing more applications because they are test optional?
Yes.
There are a number of schools I know for this year's seniors where the number of applicants is astounding.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned into, acceptance rates at, low single digits,
Right.
because your schools are getting 90,000 applicants. So it'd just be, that's the flip side of that, is your kids are now, whether it's because they're applying to more schools or you just have more kids, getting in is getting harder.
Yeah. No, that definitely happened. The colleges got far more applications because a school that may have felt out of reach to a student because of their SAT scores, they figured, they'll throw in an application, to see what happens. So applications were up, and so those acceptance rates at colleges were down for sure.
I'd like to thank Riley and Megan for their work. And one of the things Riley mentioned with the kids going to the college fair next week, one of the things that the counseling department is very good at is prepping the kids for those meetings when they do meet the person who will be reading their application. I've had several reps tell me how impressed they are with how well the Millis kids handle themselves. And that's a testament to the work you guys do to get them ready.
I think it's also the teachers and parents and everything. Like Millis kids are just nice, awesome kids, and it is nice to hear that from college reps because they really do say that Millis kids stand out in that way. But
First impressions count.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you, Bob.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you very
thanks.
much.
All right. Next, what we'll do is invite our SPED director and elementary school principal up to talk about a request and to explain the need for an additional preschool teacher and paraprofessional for next year.
Hello.
Thank you guys for coming.
Good evening.
All right. I'm Millis, Director of Special Education and Student Support. So what's important to outline first is, since really December, we've been looking at data that's been indicating an increase in kids coming up from early intervention, as well as kids moving into Millis that would be of age to enter preschool. We currently have 2 preschool classrooms, 4 sections, so two for each teacher, as well as a special education classroom that services students who have more intensive needs and need more of a substantially separate program. What's very important to let you know is that when you have an integrated preschool classroom, which those are the 2 that we have, the ratio of students with and without disabilities is 8 peers without disabilities to no more than 7 peers with disabilities. So in our projections and looking at our numbers, I'm going to talk numbers now. At the beginning of the 2021-22 school year, we had 11 students that were on IEPs.
This is just preschool, right?
This is just preschool, yes. Currently, we have 17 students on IEPs, meaning that they went through the special education evaluation process and qualified for services. Our projected number at the end of this school year will be 27. So what that means is that we've had referrals from early intervention, or we've had students that have moved in that have required special education evaluation, and either some of those kids have meetings coming and the testing is showing that they will qualify, and that's what the data is showing. Of course, we cannot predetermine ever. We have to wait until we get to that table. But what we're seeing is 27, and then in consideration of the students who have birthdays over the summer and will turn 3 years old over the summer and then can participate in our school year program for 22-23, the projected number is 28. So what that means is that if you split our sections, if we only had 4 sections, we would be at the 8 quote unquote typical peers, as they say in the Department of Early Education and Care, and 7 students who qualified for special education. What's important to let you know is that early intervention is ongoing. So we may get referrals for kids September through June. The way it's been trending, I think within a 2-month period, we received, I believe it was 7 referrals. I think Tana and I can speculate, as to why some of this may be happening. There's an increase with particular disabilities and like that. But this is something that is not unique to Millis. It's occurring all over Massachusetts and all over the country. So at the end of the day, you know, what we've done is we've really looked at how are we truly going to manage educating the kids and ensuring that they're going to receive those foundational skills at this level, ensuring that they can move on, again, without gaps in their education. You know, in looking at some of the potential pitfalls, things that we saw as difficulty if we did not increase to having 2 teachers or another classroom with the addition of a paraprofessional in that room, is an inability to cover the preschool level and or modified curriculum within the integrated classrooms. The inability to differentiate preschool lessons for specific students within the classroom. An ability to provide peer role models for students with special needs, which is extremely important developmentally at the preschool level. Then we get into the collective bargaining agreement, you know, and we get into the teachers not having time for lesson planning, the teachers not having time for differentiation of the curriculum, to take that time to differentiate for the kids that need it, to collaborate with service providers. They would have an inability to have a prep time or a lunch time. And then when you get to the laws, there would be an inability to meet the student ratio requirements set forth by the Department of Early Education and Care, in addition to meeting service delivery grids that we are mandated to provide by the Department of Education and IDEA. So, again, you know, the addition of these students, it was unanticipated. I think if we continue, again, on the trends, if we continue to follow the data, we are moving in an upward direction. This, where we are right now, is not a situation where we're trying to be proactive. I think we were trying to be proactive back in December by starting to collect the data. Now we're up against it being it's essential, and now we have to start being proactive for what could be coming.
So I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to ask a
Please.
couple questions. There's nothing behind these questions other than they're strictly.
You got
there's
it.
no-
Absolutely.
I'm not subtle, so when I want to be direct, I'll be direct.
I
But-
appreciate that.
So help me.
Please.
We had 11 kids on IEPs at the beginning of the year.
You got it.
Over the course of since September through April,
Yes.
17 other kids.
No, sir. 11 and then currently 7, so we've had an addition of 6.
Okay.
To today.
Okay. That's why, because I'm like,
Does that make
because
sense?
what I was saying is, well, if we're at 28 right now,
So we're currently at 17.
we're at 17, and you think 10 more will come
Yes.
into the program in April, May, and half of June?
You've got it. So basically what we have is we have referrals from early intervention and or kiddos that have moved in to the town.
So these are all just questions.
Sure, yeah.
We are going to have 27, projected,
Projected.
27 students on IEPs on the last day of school.
You've got it.
How many, I'm going to use the term that you use, what's the term for the
Non-disabled.
I thought there was, I thought there was another term.
Typical?
Oh, God, I just feel like
It's
I'm going to
okay.
say something wrong here.
It's okay,
So
you're
you
okay.
tell me what to say, typical? Is that a term that's used?
Non-disabled?
Non-disabled.
I'll use non-disabled.
Sure.
Feels odd, but I'll say it if you tell me it's okay.
It's
So
okay.
how many non-disabled students do we have in the program now?
Currently 39.
So 39, and so we could have 39 and 27, which is
66.
66. Mark's
Yes.
the math guy. He does the math for me. So
That was
66.
impressive.
What's our capacity with the present staffing?
So capacity.
So because
in a-
there's never
yeah.
ideal, right? Because we're not probably in an ideal situation. What's our capacity? What could we not, What's the number where we can't go over?
Sure. So the capacity, as according to the Department of Early Education and Care, for each section is 15, I believe. However, you always want to leave openings for students that come through for early intervention.
So there's 4 classrooms, 15 in the morning, 15 in the afternoon,
2 classrooms,
2 classrooms. Oh,
One
4
section.
4 sections.
4 sections.
So we're at
two-
60, so we're over, but we haven't got those extra, the projected kids are not here yet.
So our
We've got
current capacity with existing staffing is 60. We are projected to have 66 in the next 2.5 months.
Do we have, if we get extra staffing, do we have space to accommodate the other 6?
I believe that is being discussed.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Go
and
ahead.
I'll ask this.
I have more questions.
Yeah, we'll go back. This request, my understanding, is for the 2022-2023 school year.
Correct.
We are projecting to have 66 kids in the next 2.5 months, which is bigger than 60.
So, yep.
So should we be addressing this sooner than September?
I think we're going to be okay simply because the majority of kids have their eligibility meetings towards the end of the school year.
If money was no object,
I'm taking money, Terry, I didn't say that, but I'm taking money right now and I'm putting it here. Not
Okay.
that I don't care about that, but I'm, in consideration of the kids being first, we're gonna be tight. It's getting tight, very tight. It's always nerve-wracking when a teacher says to you, "I'll get it done." That's always a nerve-wracking statement. We have analyzed this.
Along with the preschool staff.
So let me tag something on, and I'm being direct here.
Please.
We are going to ensure that we don't violate the contract.
Correct.
I'm not thinking you're planning to do that, but we're here talking about it. It's in public, it's in writing. I think we have to, we're not going to violate the contract. And I know this is more rhetorical. And we're going to make sure that we meet every special education law and requirement. I have no doubt about that. I'm just as concerned about the contract as well. We don't want to create a situation, our teachers are overburdened and overworked, but we definitely don't want to violate.
Correct.
So I know that's not, so like what Mr. Conroy is saying, and I have no doubt that you can get it done. You are hired because you're good and you're doing a great job, but this is the place to, and I told Terry to tell you not to self-edit, because you can ask for everything. If we don't have the money and we can't do it,
Sure.
we can't do it. So, but we don't want to be self-editing. We want to be reasonable. So you can get through this year, but you need this extra.
I'm going to be completely honest and forthright with you.
Okay.
According to the numbers, and this is an honest answer.
Sure.
According to the numbers, we are able to get by this year.
Okay.
Okay. It's important to say numbers because the profile of students coming in are kids that may have needs that are intensive or of an intensive nature. So, I think that especially with a young kiddo coming in at 3 years old, it may need a little extra attention. It's always important to put out there that might require a little more time than we anticipated. But in consideration of everything we've looked at with the numbers, this year we should be okay. It's next year that's really going to
Okay.
be impacted. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. And some of the projected students, we have 2 integrated preschool teachers and we have 1 more substantially separate
Mhm.
preschool teachers. And some of those who are anticipated maybe going into our substantially separate versus into just the two classroom teachers or 4 sections.
And I should know this, but what happens in the summer?
So the students through the IEP process that are on IEPs, through their team meetings, it's determined whether or not they're eligible for extended school year services. Again, that's through the IEP process. Some students may be eligible for specific services such as speech and language or OT or PT. Some kiddos might be eligible for a full preschool program. So it's really dependent.
Do we deliver the services here, or do they go out during the summer?
Here.
They're here.
They're here.
And that's all contractual. We have that money in the staffing.
We're all set with that. Yep, I'm actually going to be posting for the extended school year staff next year. Not next year, tomorrow. So we're all set with that.
So we need to hire a preschool teacher, and one FTE, and one preschool paraprofessional.
Yes.
This is above and beyond the current staffing, and this is to support the increase in kids on IEPs coming in. We started the year at 11,
Yes.
and we're gonna be projected, right, and that could change, projected at starting the year at 28.
Correct.
So almost 2.5 times more.
Correct. And what I think would be, it's going to be a very interesting
2.5
thing
times.
to see what occurs over the summer, because usually we see this influx come over the summer. People are moving in, you have kids going through early intervention. This is typically a summer situation.
Do we have another wave coming in the summer, you think?
I do not know that.
You knew everything up into that.
I did.
You did very well.
I
You
did.
very well.
I also think it's important to keep you all updated
Absolutely.
on this. And because if we continue to see trends at the preschool level and kids at 3-4 years old qualifying for IEPs and services and intensive services potentially, that impacts every year following. So this is something that we've been following very closely, in addition to Sarah Browning, who is our team chair at that level, but also a preschool teacher, with Jess Couple, with our Barbie Carr, and all the teachers, Lauren Sudi, our team chair, and part-time administrator. We've all really been following the numbers, and for lack of a better term, it was go time.
This is a challenging year. Mr. Conroy and I have been on the committee since 2010, and this is by far the most challenging year budget-wise, and almost all related to special education costs. I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm just
I appreciate that.
unfunded mandates. And
You are right on.
please let the record note I'm looking at the Board of Selectmen representative, who has been very helpful in working with us. We are in a bad place. And
Absolutely. And, again, in full disclosure, of course, it's a part of my job and collaboration to work with Terry and Bob and make sure that we're continuing to look at the budget and be mindful of the budget and all of it. But as you know, it's also my job to look at the best interest of the kids.
Sure.
And I think all the way around pre-K to ties. This year has been dynamic, and the kids have required something a little different.
do you think it's going to get worse next year? I know you don't know this, but what's your gut tell you?
I think we have to be mindful of where COVID brought us. I think we have to be mindful of the fact that kids miss school. I think we have to be mindful of mental health. And I think that all of those factors could have ramifications, not just for our special education students, for all
Yeah.
students. And that's something, for me, I'm not excluding you. But, as a student support administrator, I'm not just looking at special ed right now.
Right.
I'm also looking at gen ed, because the last 2 years have impacted everybody. So we're going to keep chipping away, and I think it's important too to always bring you guys numbers, but have an honest human approach to it, so.
You mentioned, and I appreciate you not wanting to speculate on reasons why, so I'll ask it slightly differently. Because these are big increases. Like, this is, I mean, we're used to influxes, and 11 to 28 in a year is like, yeah. What are the, for lack of a better term, diagnosis, so it's not that, but what are the
Yeah.
traits, characteristics, whatever, however you want to what are we seeing?
Sure. I think to protect confidentiality, I won't speak diagnosis, but I will speak trend. I'll speak nationwide and state trend. I think we're seeing an increase with particular disabilities that impact social emotional realms, mental health realms, and academic realms. So you kind of have that trifecta approach, okay? And it's that social emotional behavioral academic struggle for kids. So I think we're seeing an increase in that. The other thing is, I think at the preschool level, we can't ignore the fact that some of these kiddos were born when we were going through our pandemic, or they had just been born. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not speculating a thing. These are conversations I've had with families, and that could be a fact. It could be. Again, I think Millis is also a desirable place to be. We have a great school district. People want to be here. Terry and I were talking about that today. People want to be here. We have had a number of people move in, so I think it's a combination. I really do. That's my simply opinion,
My next question is, do we need more of other things? A classroom teacher and a
Yeah.
paraprofessional, staff a room.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just looking like, so we had a link, and I won't go in, but, we've got a lot of kids waiting for evals that are coming in. But almost every student in this population has speech next to their name.
Yep.
Is our speech specialist have the capacity for the existing plus the potential for new?
So
all of those serve, because, we know, we've kept staffed at what we need to get through. My question is, what else do we need?
yeah, it's a fair question. It's an honest question. It's something I discussed with Bob the other day. The thing is, I think when you're considering our programs, when you're considering little ones, when you're considering Foundations 1, Foundations 2, you're talking about the speech pathologist in many of those cases being directly linked to those programs, and language being the foundation of some of the disabilities that these kids have. Right now, it seems like we're getting it done with the addition of these kids in the speech services. What's difficult, and I'm not being non-committal in my approach to it, but what's difficult is I don't know what the kids will qualify for. I can say that they will most likely, I'm saying that because it has to be during the eligibility process, they will most likely qualify for the preschool program and services within it. But to say it's specifically going to be speech and language, to say it's specifically going to be occupational therapy or physical therapy, I can't answer that right now. And I don't have data on that right now. Will I have that data in October? Yes.
So I'll ask this,
Yep.
and this is, I'm asking because
Sure.
I want us as a committee to be able to fully plan.
Yep.
And I will take a phrase from Steve and it's not going to fit well, but I want to plan for I'll rephrase it. I want to plan for,
The worst,
yeah,
hope for the best.
right.
Emergency management
Not-
planning, but it
not-
can be used for
Not being the worst
sped funding.
and having to find more people is the worst thing, but if it's the right thing that we need to do and we need to plan for it, I want us to be able to have those conversations as we're planning this budget.
Yep.
And so my question is, of these specialty services staff that we have, is their caseload only 50% of the time that they have going on right now? Because what we're talking about is a potential of 50% increase of more. So unless they have 50% of their time available to absorb these new kids,
Yep.
they don't have the capacity for 28 on top of 11.
So we do have 2 speech and language pathologists at the elementary level, you know, and the capacity, sometimes what you have to do is you have people that might do pre-K and 1, and then somebody that does 2 through 5, right? And sometimes what you do or may have to do, sometimes, I'm not saying it's gonna happen, is you may have to shift that. So you may have to have somebody pick it up so you can so you're not tilted. So one person isn't here and the other person isn't here. You've got to sort of make sure you're doing this. And right now, we can do that right now. I'm not gonna lie to you, and this is a conversation Bob and I had the other day. If we have an increase of kids over the summer, things that we're gonna be looking at, we may be looking at needing some more sort of language services. The other thing is the BCBA. A really responsible caseload for a public school is around 20, 21, 22 for a BCBA. That's in consideration of service delivery, consultation, overseeing RBTs, doing different sort of testing and like that. Right now, I think we're starting to do this. We're wavering, okay? We have more testing in that realm than we've ever had. We're seeing some behaviors increase. So we have more functional behavior assessments than we've had in the past, or more than what you would consider typical. Something I've discussed with Bob is through grants, through contracted services, I can sort of offset that for the BCBA to assist. However, if, let's say, this is just a hypothetical, we get more kids, and 3 of those kids have significant behaviors, we're gonna tip. And our BCBA will not a reflection of the BCBA. The BCBA just will not have the capacity to do that. So I think right now, we're in a little bit of a holding pattern. I see where you're going.
Yep.
And I respect it a lot and appreciate it a lot.
So, can I,
Yep.
this has been a great conversation. I think what we need as a committee is 2 things. And Mark, there's only 2 of us, so whatever we decide is what we're gonna get. That's what they get for blowing the meeting off.
That's fine.
I didn't know tonight was National Cut Day. There's 2 conversations going on. One, to address the immediate needs for pre-K next fall.
Correct.
It's a nuance. There's also a conversation of how to get through this year. We're hearing that we can, right? But this other conversation plays into a conversation we're having with the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen on additional funding, and really kind of putting paper to pen on what
Sure.
our costs look like, what our impact is. So I don't want to make it an exercise just to do an exercise, but I also think that as we have done, and this is going in the opposite direction, in the years past when we've been in tough budget years, we've had to do 5% cut, 10% cut, 15% cut. Thankfully, we've never been there, but we've done that planning. I think we could benefit from a follow-up meeting where you, Bob, Tana, whoever else, Terry, obviously sit down and start to run some numbers, because you've done a really good job of compartmentalizing it, but that's not going to help us. It's nothing about you. It's not going to help us try to plan in the short term, which leads into our longer term planning. Like this year's budget cycle, we're grasping at straws.
Sure.
Like you, we will get through. We will make it work. But I'm also concerned, once again, I'm going to circle back to you. We cannot we're not going to, we can't violate contracts and we can't violate sped laws, right?
Correct.
No one's intending to do that. We're clearly stating it. But that requires resources. That's not just good planning and smart, that requires bodies. You have to cover people for lunch. You have to cover people for planning.
Correct.
So I know you got a lot going on, but I think in the next month or so, if you guys could, you understand what we're looking for? Terry, no.
So like the
Whatever-
example of those 3 kids that you were talking about.
Sure. And
Okay, if
whatever you want. If you
scenario
want a
one-
presentation, we can do that.
We need some numbers
Sure.
to see what it looks like, because I'm interested in what you do and the services you deliver, but from the standpoint of the budget, what does an impact look like? Because regardless of what our budget is when at town meeting, if you come to us in the summer in an emergency meeting and say, we're going to have to fund those positions, if we can start to lay the groundwork with our colleagues across the town field
Okay.
on what impacts look like, and we've already done that, and they've been very receptive, but this is really feeling different than any other years.
So it's kind of okay, we complete all of these that we know about. We do all these, we get all the testing
And then
done,
5
what we
come
know
in.
about. And the best case scenario is X.
Okay.
But then we do all the testing and a couple of them come out Y. And then they all come out Y. So now we're in Z land. What do those needs look like so that, because my personal opinion is I would rather have this committee start planning for that middle tier than be hoping for the best that all these unknowns fall the right way.
Yep.
In a realistic prediction, which obviously could be wrong, but we also don't need the sky is falling and 50 kids are moving in. Like, that's just not.
Right.
No, and I'm not saying, I'm just saying, we don't want to make this truly an exercise in futility. Like, we want this to be a realistic, hey, here are 3 different scenarios. We stay the same, we have 28 first day of school, we're making it, based on the new teacher and the new para. But over the summer, 5 moved in, or part of those 28, the IEP came back, I'm not going to say worse, but it came back that required more services. I'll let you guys figure it out, but you know what we're looking for as well.
Yeah, I do think part of the challenge is that it's almost, normally you'd go back and look at historicals, how many incidents did we have? over
Right,
the
right,
summer?
right. These numbers,
Much like
that's,
with-
right.
Much like with what Riley and Meg just did, this year doesn't line up with historical.
Right.
We almost have a new baseline, which is interesting, because you could, in the past, you could look at trends. You had years and years and years and years of
We did
trends,
that.
right?
Right, and
And now you have this, it's like a huge hole, and everything just kind of fell out,
so maybe part of it is, instead of hedging on how results may come out, it's, okay, that you know, if we know it's those three is going to require, I'm just pointing out, a new BCBA or a half. Well, then maybe it's, if we got a half, how much room do we have? If we had a whole one, how much
Okay.
room do we have?
Yeah.
You know,
And-
how much room does an additional this or that provide us from where we are
That's probably an
today?
easier lift.
I know exactly what, I know where you're
That's,
going.
because that is, I like that, because that is, we've identified the resource, we know what the cost is, and then you can fill in the gaps on capacity for, and if we have a speech, and you do what, I'm just throwing out what we've talked about. We hire a new speech person or a half speech person. This is how many more
We could absorb.
they could do. I think that's I like that. That's the bet. That's easier than you trying to say, because we're still getting to where if 5 kids come in the summer, we still need,
Right.
we're still trying to get back to what are the resources needed.
But whatever you need, I'm happy to create.
This was a very helpful, the memo was good, the conversation was good.
Okay.
Now we just have to find the money. Can you help us with that?
Any word on
We can try.
extraordinary relief?
Nothing yet. Nothing yet.
On that, in all seriousness, does that come from the state? So, so I think that it would be, I think we should look at reaching out to our legislators, both existing legislators at the state level and to an extent rolling in. We will have at least one new because we're being redistricted this year.
I did not know that.
So we're losing David Linsky in this cycle and picking up, I believe she's from Holliston. She's the rep from that. Millis is being moved into Holliston and Hopkinton for a state rep district. So whoever the existing rep is in that area, I believe she's from Holliston right now, will be our rep starting January of 2023.
I did not know that. Oh. Mr. Linsky has been very good to this town.
They took the 2 precinct of Millis out of that, so they left Natick Hall and they moved it up there. And our Senate district is changing, but it's not, it's the same person,
Becca Roush.
or Sean Dooley, depending on who wins.
I did not know. Yeah, I have to catch up.
So, given, again, Stephen, we're in territories we haven't thankfully had to dive as far into as it looks like we're going to. But I think there's
Maybe-
more than a compelling case to bring people from Beacon Hill here to understand what's going on and ask them to push the extraordinary aid number as high as.
Maybe we can work with the chair on a conversation she can have, at least start the conversation. And then we can get whatever we need for backup.
Mhm.
Robin or you can reach out. But yeah, this has been very helpful. Thank you for this.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you coming in. All right. Bob, do you want, so we can either punt everything to another meeting, the rest of what's on here, or we can run through it.
What do you think? I'm thinking,
I don't think we need to go through it. I think we can just.
I think it was appropriate to hear the presentations. I think we have saved the rest. It's not a lot, but I think we save it until, is that okay with you?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Is there anything else with
No,
Mr.
the
Wigan needs to come up?
The physician's contract.
That's a vote.
We can
Right,
vote on
everything
that
else
later,
is,
so-
everything else
Yeah.
would require a vote, so we can't. Okay. All right, then that'll be the end of what we listened to tonight. So,
We have to go, Oh, we don't have a vote.
No,
We can't vote.
correct. So
I vote that you did a great job tonight.
I appreciate
Don't put that in the record, Jody. On that.
As of now, our next scheduled meeting is April 26th. So that's it. Thank you all. Have a good night.